Hello and welcome to another special program we have today. We have a very special guest. Guy's name is Jerry McKenzie. I don't know if you musicians out there have heard of Jerry before, but he's a rather famous individual, at least in his own mind.
Yes, thank you.
And Jerry has a ton of experience. He's worked around the Detroit area for years, but he is even more famous than that. He's worked with one of my favorite bands, the Stan Kenton Band. So Jerry, where the heck did you get interested in music?
Well, first, let me say how nice it is to be here with you and share these stories, because people like to hear a lot of the stories behind the scenes. My mother took me to the Fox Theater many, many years ago. I was 3 years old, and I was fortunate enough to see Norman Granz Jazz at the Philharmonic. And of course, at that time, Gene Krupa was with Norman Granz, Louis Bellson was with Norman Granz, and Buddy Rich was with Louis.
Whoa, three of the best drummers in the business.
And also, that's where I got a great chance to hear a marvelous, marvelous trio was Oscar Peterson with Ray Brown, and the drummer was Ed Thigpen. And at that time, I became engrossed in watching Gene. And to make a real long story short, I told my mother, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to play the drums.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 3 years old.
Oh, jeez, that's great.
And fortunately, to speed it up, the story, at age 6, my mother was fortunate enough to find a drum teacher at age 6. So I started at age 6, George.
Wow. So, and I assume you learned how to read music, and you played with, did you play with high school bands or anything like that?
Yes. I was the captain of the marching band. We had 8 snare drummers, and I was the one who blew all the whistles and all the commands for the band to start down the field, back up the field, and off the field, and all that. Yes.
You're one of these guys that went out front and did the back bends that go all the way back, and come back up?
No, we did not do that at that time, George.
You didn't do that, huh?
No.
Well, tell me about, where you started actually playing with big bands, because that's where you're kind of a famous guy.
My first big band was actually, believe it or not, was the Glenn Miller Band, under the direction of Ray McKinley.
You played with that band?
Yes, I went, and I also did some musical things with Tex Beneke, who led the band at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Tex Beneke. Ray was, I was on the band when Ray McKinley was with the band.
Okay.
And Ray and I shared the drum chair. So I was mainly known as the ballad drummer.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 20.
20 years old, wow.
Yes.
What a great experience.
Actually, just shy of 20, And I was on the band at that particular time with Ray. And at that time, so many bands were touring, George. They were all touring. We used to bump into other bands, and Stan Kenton. We would be checking in the hotel.
Right.
Stan's band would be checking out. So I got to know Stan, just, hello, how are you? Nice to see you again, in that particular situation,
But before you got to the point where you were playing with the Ray McKinley Band and some of those other bands, you must have done some stuff in high school. And
yes, I was fortunate enough to play with a big band in high school. It was just like a lab band, at that time. And also I worked with a small group that it was called the Sammy D Quintet. We were on a TV show every Saturday similar to Dick Clark's Bandstand. So I got a lot of exposure with that group. It was 2 tenor saxophones, piano, guitar, and drums.
Fantastic.
And it was, the saxophone players used to have what was called the Battle of the Saxes.
Oh yeah.
The one person would lay on the floor, and the other sax player would blow down to him on the floor with the saxophone and push his way all around the dance floor.
I hate to say this, Jerry, but I used to do that too. Back
Really?
in my younger days. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
You lay
goodness.
on your back, kick your feet up in the air, and play the saxophone. It's great fun.
Right, but and plus it was we did a lot of rock and roll, so I was exposed to the rock and roll style of drumming,
Which
at
is a
that
lot
time.
different.
Yes, at
Especially
that-
with the foot.
Yes,
right?
at that time. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's great. So anyway, you're 20 years old, and now you get an opportunity to go out and play with these huge big bands. You know, they're traveling around the country. You must have spent a lot of time on the road.
Yes, I did. I spent a lot of time with the Miller Band, and what transpired was we, the Miller Band, were in Vegas, okay, and we were playing at the Riviera Hotel, and Kenton's band was at the Tropicana Hotel. And I got to a point of where I wanted to play a little bit more.
Sure.
Some of the specialty tunes on the Miller Band, and I finally thought it was me and the guitar player talked about it, and I said, Ralph, I think I need to get off the band. So it was our off night, and he and I went to hear the Kenton Band.
Uh-huh.
And I said, let's get bathed in brass, okay? 10 brass players, okay? 5 bones, 5 trumpets.
Right.
So we were sitting there, and it was at the Trop, and Stan saw me, and I saw him, and I waved to him. And I'm looking, and I thought, I don't recognize the drummer. In fact, I don't remember who the drummer was at that particular time.
Okay.
But the drummer that was playing was not the original drummer. I thought Jimmy Campbell was on the, because Jimmy Campbell did the Roadshow album with June Christie. He
Right,
recorded that.
right.
And it wasn't. So, and the intermission, Stan comes down, he says, I'm auditioning drummers. He says, I want you to come up and play.
Whoa, really?
I said, what? I said, no, Stan. He says, you're going to play. He says, no, I want you up. And he walked away. Ralph said to me, Jerry, this is a golden opportunity.
This is an
for you."
opportunity to do it.
Okay. Well, to make a real long story short, I get up to the drums. Red Kelly was the bass player at that time. Red did quite a few albums with the band. And he said, gee, Jerry, he says, it'd be great to hear you play. And I said, when we, let me know the lineup of tunes. Well, Stan comes up on the bandstand, he starts calling tunes, and he says, Jerry, you don't need the music. He says, don't play them. He says, just play.
Is that
just
right?
swing. Yeah, he says, I said, Stan, there might be some breaks I need to know, whatever. So anyway, he goes down, so Red says, Jerry, pull up the tunes. Well, I knew a few of the tunes, not from by heart, but I'll really speed up the story. The last tune was a tune I did not record it with the band, called The Big Chase.
Oh,
and
yeah.
at the end, I remember there's a huge drum solo. So we're going along, and I'm telling you, George, I was wringing wet. Got to the end of the tune, and the band goes ba 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 da da, and Stan cuts it off, and I take off on the solo. Till this day, George, I have no clue what I played, what I did. He brought the band back in, and that was it. Red said, Jerry, it was wonderful to play with you. I says, Red, you held it together with me. And I said, I can't do this again. I says, look at me. I said, I had no chops, as you call in the business, chops.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't been doing any fast tempo tunes on the McKinley Band.
Right.
I was, I wasn't doing the specialty tunes.
You're all in the mood and
I went
Pennsylvania 65000.
right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. And after it was done, I went back. Stan called me back in the back room, and he says, Jerry, he says, I want you to join the band in 2 weeks in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And that's how it happened. Fortunate,
fantastic.
lucky break at the time. And I said yes. And I went after that out of the room down to Ralph. He says, Jerry, he says, I didn't think you could ever play like that.
Is that right?
Yeah, he
You
says,
never had the opportunity.
exactly.
You know, you're sitting back there playing those Miller
said,
charts.
he says you deserve to get the job or the gig with the band, as we say. And I said, yes. He hired me. So in 2 weeks, I left the Miller Band and joined Stan, the band in L.A. But I can tell you, in that 2 weeks, I was doing a lot of practicing in the room to get my hands back in shape, to get my endurance back in shape.
Yeah, that's a hot band.
Well,
You know, I got to tell you a story.
go ahead.
I'm in high school, right? I'm a senior in high school, and the Stan Kenton Band is playing at a little tiny place called Lake Bomazene in Vermont. And so I said to a couple of my friends and a couple of young ladies, I says, why don't we go down and listen to the band? So we went down. I had never heard a big band before. Never heard a big band before. And when that band came in, the Kenton drummer, might have been you, I don't know. This was in the 50s, so probably before you. He had a huge cymbal with mallets, and he started that big swoosh sound, and all of a sudden the brass would come in. And the goosebumps never went down all night long. It was amazing.
You said everything, and I would not have to repeat it right now. That's exactly what Stan loved on the band. He loved cymbals.
A lot of cymbal. And it was mallets on the
yes,
cymbal.
exactly, George. I had 3 huge cymbals on the band, and they all belonged to Stan. So when you hear the band, Stan had what's called a cymbal library. He used all the cymbals that he had.
Is that right?
And exactly what you were saying, I rolled with timpani mallets.
Yeah.
And with getting that, before the band came in, and Stan would always give me that, like, give me more cymbals.
Yeah, right.
I thought I would roll with timpani mallets on those cymbals. I thought they were going to crack, George.
Yeah.
I'm serious. And I got metal shaft timpani mallets in the hardest beater album, the mallet,
The mallet itself, right.
The mallet sound, okay, on those cymbals that I could possibly get. Unbelievable.
But what a sound.
Yeah, when we
What
used
a
to play
sound.
the theme song, artistry and rhythm,
Oh, yeah.
I used to roll on the cymbals for about 3 minutes till I kept going and going and going and going till finally he brought in the band. You know, so,
yeah.
oh yeah, he loved cymbals, and it was unbelievable the power that I needed to drive the band. And also, let me step back when you went to hear the band. What a coincidence that you mentioned to me where you got Stan's autograph in Torrington, Connecticut.
Lived in Torrington for about 10 years, and he used to come through town every once in a while and play at the local theater. And we'd go down, and I had a chance to buy one of his albums there, and went to the bar after. Of course, Stan was there, and half the band was there. And I got him to sign the album, which is great.
I know, and you showed it to me. And when I played that venue in Torrington, Connecticut, it was a theater,
Right.
and it was up on up on a hill, and it wasn't a real large theater,
No.
but it was acoustically. That's when it stuck out in my mind. And what a small world that you brought that up about Torrington. The acoustics in there were incredible.
Yeah.
The drum presence in there, the brass presence, the
Yeah,
whole
it's great.
presence of the band. It was just fantastic, and I never forgot it. Never forgot it. Torrington's you talk about a small world.
I know.
That you mentioned. When you mentioned Torrington, Connecticut to me, it was unbelievable.
But he always did his bit with the peanut vendor, and put the brass out in the audience. And a couple times I saw him, he would take the trumpets and place them strategically around the audience, and do the peanut vendor, and they would start that da-da, and they would all start that clashing harmony, and he would do that.
Exactly right. Or when he's stationed them at various, like you said, various places in the audience, eventually, well, I shouldn't say eventually, the 5 trumpets were right together, right just in front of me. And they were all trying to screech as high as they possibly could
Oh, yeah.
on the peanut vendor.
And you can still hear.
Yes. Let me tell you, George, there are tunes with that band that I can, they're so vivid in my mind.
Yeah.
I was so fortunate to play with that band on 2 occasions. I joined that band in late 58 into 59, into 59. And then left the band, and I was a 10-year lag time.
Okay.
In 1972, Stan called me out of the clear blue. I get a phone call. I'm down in the basement playing on my drums, and the wife said, there's a phone call for you. She says, I don't know who it is. I says, well, she says, I missed the name. So I grabbed the phone. I says, hello. He says, Jerry, this is Stan. I says, Stan?
Stan who?
Yeah. He says, Stan Kenton. And he come right at me. He said, do you want to come on back on the band? I was steps beyond stunned. I said, yes. And I went back to, again, move the story along. That's when I was fortunate enough to record the double package album live at Butler University in Indiana, called Live at Butler University with the 4 freshmen.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm on that album. Plus, they had enough music, George, that they recorded a second double package album of just the band.
Really?
So I did 2 double package albums there.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was steps beyond fortunate to do that, seriously. And I mean, the 2 albums that I got Grammy Awards for, the band got Grammy Awards for, that I was fortunate enough to record, was Kenton's West Side Story.
Oh, wow. That's a great one.
And the Adventures in Jazz album. So those 2 albums.
Yeah.
To make a real long story short, the West Side Story album was a very, very difficult album.
Oh, yeah.
Johnny Richards was the composer, arranger for that. And again, Johnny came to me and he talked to the rhythm section, and it was interesting. He says, Jerry, I know how you play. He says, I don't want to take anything personal by this. He says, what I have written in the drum parts, he says, I want you to play those verbatim.
Really?
Play them exactly the way I wrote them. He says, they'll work. Well, I had the utmost respect for Johnny Richards.
Oh, he's a terrific arranger.
And they did. So when you hear me play on there, they're played exactly the way
Is that right?
that Johnny Richards wanted them played. Okay.
Yeah, he was a heck of an arranger.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Oh, there was so much. I get excited about this. I mean, again, I had so much respect for Lenny Niehaus.
Oh, yeah.
Lenny's things were so musical. And you obviously you know that he did all the music writing for Clint Eastwood.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he does all. If you see the liner credits for music and that, you'll catch Lenny Niehaus's name. But I did a fun album. It was called Adventures in Standard, which were all short tunes, about maybe 2 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever. And Stan wanted to use those for filler tunes on the radio, and I knew the way Lenny wrote that what was coming when the brass was coming in,
Yeah, right.
the fills and the feeling that Lenny wanted with it. Those were fun charts to play of his on the band.
You know, the one album that I have, I think that he wrote most of the stuff, was one called The Ballad Side of Stan Kenton.
Yes.
That was all mostly saxophones.
Yes.
A lot of saxophone stuff.
Yes, yes. I did not record that album. No.
But that was a great one, and he has done a lot of arranging for saxophone quartets, which is kind of interesting.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And we've played just recently. We played 2 of his arrangements for a concert we did here locally.
Oh,
Yeah.
how nice is that?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of ballad albums, the very first ballad album that I recorded with Stan was called The Romantic Approach of Stan Kenton.
Okay.
Then he followed it up with another ballad type album called The Sophisticated Approach of Stan Kenton.
Okay.
And that was the second one. And then I had the fun album that was really fun to record, was From the Creative World of Stan Kenton Comes a Merry Christmas. Do you have that album?
No, I don't.
Yes. You led me into, Stan augmented the band and put 4 mellophoniums.
Right.
I
Right.
recorded with the mellophonium.
Oh, did
band.
you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
on that. Yeah, with the mellophonium. So 14 brass,
Wow.
5 bones, 5 trumpets, and 4 mellophoniums. So you can imagine
Yeah.
the massive sound that is coming at me. And the interesting thing also, the way Stan set the band up, he didn't set it up in the Les Brown style stacked.
Right.
He set it up in a V shape.
Kind of like a V, right?
Yes, the saxes were to my left, the trombones were to my right, rhythm section sat directly in the middle. Drums, the conga player was to my left, the bass player was to my right. So the lead trumpet player was blowing right into
over your
the
head?
back, right over my head. Well, the lead trumpet player's got all the licks in it, as I call it.
Right.
So when I told Lenny, I had briefly mentioned to Lenny, I said, Lenny, don't write the drum chart. I says, just Xerox the lead trumpet player's part. I know what's coming, but he just gave me a little roadmap to do.
Yeah.
But I knew the way, I'm getting excited about it. I knew the way Lenny wrote. I really did. I mean, we had a slew of arrangers coming in. We had Lenny Niehaus, you had Johnny Richards, you had Marty Page,
Oh, yeah.
thing. You had Ken Hanna that sent some things in. You had Bill Holman,
Oh, yeah.
and Pete Rugolo. And one of the favorite albums of mine, and my very dear drummer is on it, Mel Lewis is on it.
Oh, yeah.
And Mel and I became very close friends through the years. And he played on that particular album. That is one of the most fantastic albums ever recorded by that band. And Mel's playing was incredible. I mean, was just a very musical drummer. And what I'm leading you into on that particular album, there was I picked out this chart, Stomping at the Savoy,
Oh, yeah.
if you hear it. And I listened to it, and I listened to the way Mel played it. And I tried to get Stan to play that chart. And the interesting thing, he did not like nostalgia. He liked to keep surging forward.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
kept pushing forward.
Well, he pushed forward too much for me towards the end. He was getting into Cuban Fire, and some of these other things were really kind of getting really far out.
Well, now, I take it that maybe wasn't a real fan of Cuban Fire, were you? You can be honest with me. Now, this was one of the albums that Mel is on drums.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, that he played absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the way they recorded him, and we played one of the charts on there, and I loved it. It was in 6/8. It's the name of it is La Suerte de los Tontos,
Okay.
and that stands for the fortune of the fools. And I laid into that
Yeah.
one, man. Let me tell you, that was one. In fact, I got goosebumps talking about it. I laid into that one. I mean, I was on a destroy mission on my drum set.
Yeah.
When we did the clinics,
Yeah.
with the at the schools and that, I had so much fun with those clinics, conveying what I was doing with the band, and things, just basics, to give them to go away with something from what I was doing. Okay, just the simple basics. And my drum teacher, my second teacher, taught me two very important things, George, that I've carried through my career, my musical journey. is, Jerry, he says, I'm going to teach you time, being able to swing, read music. He said, the drum solos are just extra credits on your report card.
Yeah.
He said, don't worry about the drum solos. He said, time.
Yep.
And that's my signature
Yeah.
approach is time, because he said also, he says, as you go along and you get into the recording studios, you're going to have to play with a click track.
Oh, geez, yeah. And some guys hate that.
Yeah, I know it.
Some guys hate that.
You got to play with a click track,
I know.
okay? So that was, I was so fortunate to have two teachers, and the second one took me at age 11 and then pushed me forward. And then finally he said, you got to come out of the basement, he says, and you got to go out and do it.
Yep.
He says, and it could be very painful sometimes. He said, you're going to slip and fall, or you're going to fall, or whatever.
Yeah.
And another thing too, he said, well, some of the people are not going to like your playing. So he says, just prepare yourself for that.
Yeah.
But I never forgot this either. He said, Jerry, be yourself. And I've never forgot that.
Yeah.
So when you hear me play, my emotion behind the drums, what I'm doing is coming from my heart, going to the people,
Yep.
and I'm conveying that emotion to them when I play the drums. And I love playing ballads. I like playing ballads.
Yeah.
I do. I
Yeah.
really enjoy playing ballads.
Wow. What a story.
Well, from start to up to where,
But you've been doing a lot locally.
yes, locally I've been very, very fortunate. I led my own group.
You had your own group at Nicola's there for years.
It was Jerry McKenzie's Just Jazz. I was fortunate enough to bring in various people from singers to trombone to trumpet to sax to vibes, etc. I did a rotation in there,
Yeah.
and we were there for about 15 years, I think 16 years.
That's fantastic.
And it was just fortunate, but there's so much talent around the Detroit
I
area.
love Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of talent, and I was so
The Michigan Jazz Festival
Yes.
is the best, in my
Well,
opinion.
I'll be there, but
Yeah.
not playing.
Oh, Jerry.
Okay, no, not playing. In fact, I finally have decided that it was time, George. It was time to just, very simply said, and leave it there, with my drum playing, is to go out on a high
Absolutely.
and leave it there, and just do that. You know, I did just go out on a high. Yes, I miss it, and I will miss my colleagues that I've played music with, and all that. But I can do anything. I can do anything. I could be an MC. I could do anything they want me to do
Yeah.
as far as music is concerned.
Sure.
I'll be at the Michigan Jazz Festival, and also a very, very dear friend of mine, George. His name is Larry Gage. He made a donation to the Michigan Jazz Festival and named a stage after me.
Fantastic.
It's Jerry McKenzie's Rathskeller stage.
That's great.
So that'll be it. So, I mean, I just want to say, so I'll be there, and I'll get to see the people that I've seen throughout the years, the people that I know, and just I'm really looking forward to it.
Jerry, what a pleasure this has been. We got to wrap it up. Can you believe we've gone through 30 minutes already?
Really?
Yeah.
George, this has been steps beyond
This has
fantastic.
been great. And thank you so much for coming. It's been a great pleasure of mine.
This has
And,
been my pleasure for you, and I mean that. And it's hopefully I've conveyed some things to the people.
It's been fantastic.
And given them some of the insights as far as music, along with you too. And you're still doing all the music.
Still trying to do it, Jerry.
Thank you ever so much from my heart
Okay.
to your heart, George. Thank you.
Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen.